Good evening, folks, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk here on KZGN-TV, your only local TV station. I'm Al Huey, along with my partner Robert Eierman, and our special guest tonight, the one, the only, Mr. Eddie Thomas. Glad to have you with us, Eddie.
Good to be here, sir.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I still have to throw kudos on you. I've said it before. This man got elected this past election cycle to City Council.
That's correct.
But he's also full-time on the base as a train driver, an engineer,
Good comeback.
and pastors Victory Baptist Church. Now that's a full plate.
Yes.
It is. And I commend you for being able to keep all those plates up and going.
I'm working on it real hard.
So 7 months now you've been on the council. Is it what you expected?
7 short months, or depending on what side of the fence, 7 long months. Yeah, I think it's everything I expected. It's just a learning curve that I need to continue to improve on. It's scary, but it's also exciting at the same time, Al, because I'm learning new things and policies and people and falling deeper in love with Ridgecrest. So I'm excited about it.
This council, and Robert and I have talked about it, is such a tremendous positive change than what we've had in the past.
Yes.
It seems to be a lot more transparency and openness to communicate and work with the public. And we commend the council on that.
You know, I've had plenty of discussions with this mayor, former mayors, former councils, and people may argue that my view is not the correct one, but my view is that, of course, the city has to conduct the regular business at a council meeting. But my feeling is that one of their primary pieces of business at any council meeting is to interface with their constituents. In the past, that has not been a priority of the council. I guess one of the best examples I can think of was when in public comment there was a lady that was complaining about the gutters getting full of dirt, and then water gets on it and it gets slimy and slippery, and herself included, and other especially elderly people and bicyclists have fallen. And the council, as I've accused them of being in the past, those councils, they sat there like 5 bumps on a log and said or did nothing. Until we get to council comments at the end of the meeting, and this is after that elderly lady and some of her friends and other people have walked out of the council meeting grumbling and completely upset and saying things like, they don't care about us. To have the council, and I think it was Councilman Morgan, explain that it's very difficult to run the street cleaner anymore because in today's world, they consider that hazardous waste to get rid of whatever they collect. It's very expensive. It's a very involved procedure, so they don't do it. And it isn't that they don't want to solve those problems. In fact, I think that problem got solved, and I forget how they found the water leak, etc. But my point is, that was 2.5 hours later, and everybody that had left the meeting, they don't care. Whereas this current council takes the opportunity to, in a short, concise way, address the public's comments, and it leads to so much better feeling between the citizens and the council, and it's just so positive that it has always boggled my mind.
And like the attorney said, you don't want to get into any kind of long conversation.
Correct.
And they certainly can't act, but they can explain, they can say, oh, this is important enough, I'd like this put on the next agenda. There's all kinds of things that can be done, and then the people feel that they're being heard. Right. And so, as Al said, kudos to the council, this new council, for taking on that approach. And I think it's been a very positive thing.
You know, I think it has too, because it gives us an opportunity to learn from the public as well. We as a council went and approached our attorney, city attorney, and asked him, how far can we go? Because we didn't want to get into any kind of trouble, legal trouble. So he told us, it's good that you want to interact with them, but just kind of make sure you don't get into a debate or an argument, but by all means explain and give them an explanation as to why or how we're doing some things, so that it would cause them to come at ease, or at least understand some of the decisions that we are trying to make. And as you probably both know, at our last council meeting, we are in the process of changing the order of our agenda so that we can have even more interaction with
Robert
with the
doesn't know.
public.
He was on a plane to Washington.
Oh,
Right.
oh yeah, we changed it. We voted to change it so that we can get more interaction with the community. Also tell them some of the events that are coming on, and then also be able to talk to them.
What was the specific change that was made, or the changes?
We moved the public comments, the ending comments up, and we pushed some of the other agenda item stuff down, so we have more time to interact with each other.
Okay, so council comments become earlier in the evening.
No, it's council announcements.
Announcements, that's the correct term.
Okay.
That's the right term.
Right after public comment, where they could, if according to Mr. Lemieux, have some more discussion with public commenters. Okay?
That's really a positive
But
change.
they still have council comments
Okay.
at the
At
end.
the end.
Right. All right.
Because the
But-
public is important to us. They're the one who voted for us. We, it's never been a time I go to Walmart or any place, someone in the public doesn't say, hey, I love what you guys are doing at City Council. So if we can continue to keep that inspiration going or interaction going with each other, then I think we're going to continue to push forward.
I think so also.
And
Okay.
that gets to another part of council meetings that I'd like to get into, but we're moving up close on a break here. So we'll get into it after we come back. But I want to talk about what happens oftentimes is you get an agenda item with a sunset before the next council meeting, and you have to vote that night before you even get enough data. So when we come back, we'll talk about that right here on Ridgecrest Talk. Join us.
And welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk here on KZGN-TV. This evening, our special guest is Councilman Eddie Thomas. Again, I'm Robert Eierman, along with my partner, Al Huey. And you had a question you were going to address, and the break interrupted you.
I did.
Well, you see, that's the problem with...
And I didn't even take a nap.
Yeah.
No, it has to do with, I remember. It has to do with, and I've seen it not only on this council, but many previous councils, and actually talked to a former council member who was very, very upset when this type of thing happened. And that's when you get an agenda item, and you have to have a vote that night because it's sunset, or you lose money, or a grant goes away, or whatever. Usually has to do with money. You have to vote that night, otherwise you miss out on the opportunity because the deadline is before the next council meeting. And to that respect, I think, I can understand sometimes how that might happen, but it happens too often. And whoever is doing the agenda,
Normally the mayor, right, is
And
primarily
the
responsible.
city manager and the mayor, as I understand, is who's primarily responsible for the agenda. That needs to stop, because I know if I were a council member, and I'm sure you feel the same way, you're sitting up there and you're going, I'm seeing this for the first time pretty much. Yeah, I got my packet 2 days ago or whatever, but I haven't had enough time to research this, How do you feel about those situations?
Well, Al, it's if I can recall, I think it's only happened to me twice thus far, and it makes you feel somewhat uncomfortable because you're not fully aware of all of the do's or don'ts, the yeses, the nos. So you kind of cram and try to do your best to get as much information as you can to try to make a pretty good decision. But there's a lot of things that our mayor and city manager are trying to do and get us headed in the right direction. So I wouldn't necessarily so much fault them, but because we know as council men and women that it is our responsibility to do that research. And even though it's at the last moment, we still got to dig in and try to get as much information as we can to make a very good decision.
But I guess what I'm saying is a lot of times staff could have brought that to you previous council meeting where you would have had 2 weeks, I know in one particular case of an issue, which I won't get into, but I know the staff had it at the previous council meeting, but the council didn't get it till the next council meeting. So that was 2 weeks that the council lost in being able to do some investigation research in order to come up with a sound decision. So
Yeah, I have to chirp in here. We've seen it too often, and I completely agree with Al. I'm not saying that anybody does it intentionally or through incompetence, but I don't think that they place enough emphasis on getting things to the council in what I would consider to be a timely manner. And it might be that they're working very diligently and we need to get this information so we can present it and that information. But what winds up happening is then we have the last minute crisis and
which could be avoided a lot of times, maybe
right.
not all the time.
And the biggest thing is it not only puts the council in a difficult position, it conveys the entire wrong image to the public.
Right.
And I think that the council should be a little bit firmer in their guidance to the city manager to say that we've had enough of this. We're not going to do this again. You wind up in this situation. Well, we might call a special meeting, or if it's anyway. I think that the city manager and therefore the staff needs to be admonished for doing this, and doing a better job of planning. It's certainly not anything that is the council's fault, but I think that the council needs to use their authority.
One incident that I was talking about, there's nothing that would prevent staff from forwarding all the information, say, hey, this is going to be coming up at your next council meeting. All right, I'm giving you all this data so you can look into it, research it, so that you're prepared that night when we get ready to vote on it, rather than dropping it on them 2 days before the council meeting. I don't know what would prevent staff from doing something like that. Can you think of anything?
Outside of both Al and Robert, I think they are, and I'm not trying to be one side or the other because I'm on council now, but I know staff has a lot of things that they have to do. A lot of things they have to do.
Yeah, because we're shorthanded from what we used to do.
Exactly. So when we get our packages, is normally made available to us on Friday. So we have Friday, the weekend, and then get ready for a Wednesday city council meeting. So when we get that information, I'm assuming, because I haven't been in it long enough to know how long they have that information prior to. I just know that we get it on Friday, and it's our responsibility to go after it.
Maybe that would be a good question to ask the city manager, that the manager could ask these staff people that are bringing this to him to put on the agenda, is how long have you had this information?
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I can concur with that. But I just know we get it on Friday, and it's like, here it is, and we're making our meetings, talking with people, And they usually are extremely helpful with trying to get us some background history as to
I
why it
understand.
came
But
on.
still, the
and
pressure
agenda
of
and all
having to
stuff.
make a vote that
It's
night,
a lot of pressure.
especially
And-
when it has to do with dollars, given our financial situation in our city. You know, we got too
Got
many
challenges.
expenses and not enough revenue.
I agree wholeheartedly, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
You know, we're working on it really hard. So it's a good point. It's a good point. I think we can always do better.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
think that's why
yeah.
this council, not saying anything bad about the other council, but this council is really, really working hard on trying to do better and make things better. So,
Well, we're going to take a break again.
okay.
When we come back, we'll talk about past councils with an upcoming event that was announced at the last council meeting. If you weren't there, boy, you missed a good one. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with my partner Al Huey, and our guest tonight for our final segment of the evening is Councilman Eddie Thomas. And you had something you were going to address.
Right. At the last council meeting, it was announced again
Oh,
that the Super Walmart is coming and that we're going to have a groundbreaking sometime in the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. There was no deadline given. So it allowed for some more wiggle room. They're very careful to allow that, you know. And this has only been going on, if you've been here any length of time in this town. I ran for council in 2004, and people didn't want me. So, but anyway, it was talked about. They were in discussions with Walmart back then
yes,
in 2004. So that's
11 years.
11 years, and I guess it goes back even further than that because Mr. Gary Parsons announced that this has been going on for some 13 years.
Yes, sir.
So, anyway, supposed to be breaking ground sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks. They want to allow council and staff to get a hold of former council members and former staff people that have worked on this over the 13 years to come together and be a part of the ceremonial groundbreaking, or I
Yeah,
guess
that is
groundbreaking.
correct.
Yeah, I think they call it, yes.
Which, like I said, I don't know when that is. But Robert and I had Mr. Parsons on here back in January.
Yes.
Okay.
And he told us then that Super Walmart would begin construction in the spring.
Right. They would break ground in the spring.
And we said, nah. He says, no, I guarantee it. I says, you want to put a gentlemanly bet on it? He said, sure. So we agreed that if they broke ground, in the spring, Robert and I would buy him a steak dinner. If they didn't, he would buy us hamburgers.
Steak for a hamburger. Swears.
It was a fair deal.
Fair.
And I talked to Mr. Parsons after the meeting saying he thought, well, this is still spring.
Depending on how you define it, huh?
I'm going to have to show him the calendar.
Right. And that this month, September, has a date in it which says the beginning of fall.
Right.
So we went spring and right through summer and into fall before we get it.
So anyway, we've had some fun with Mr. Parsons, all in fun.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. And he's a hard worker.
Yes, he is.
And I know he's been working on the Super Walmart forever. Back in 2004, he was the go-to guy on it. So, yeah, he, along with others, I'm not saying he was the only one that was doing the
Right.
yeoman's work on it. And so it'd be interesting to see how many former council members come out and how many former staff people. We've lost a lot of people that are no longer with us that put a good part of their skin into it also.
Yes.
It'll be nice to see, I guess. with super Walmarts or Walmarts in general, there's always the question about what they do to a small business in a community. And we are definitely a small community, very remote. It's not like you can go 20 minutes one direction or the other and get into a more populated area. You go 20 minutes in either direction and you're talking to coyotes.
Well, I just hope that this Walmart event coming would not be Mr. Parsons' signature event that he thinks he can retire after he finally gets Walmart care. That there's more things that he's got to continue to do.
I haven't heard him. Of course, he could surprise all of us and announce his retirement, but I haven't heard him talk about retirement.
He better not, because we need him to help us get out of this current situation as the economic development chairperson. So.
And speaking of economic development, which we'll get into in our next show coming up next week, we'll talk a little bit about the budget, because economic development has to do with that. But it was announced here, now, 4 weeks ago? Almost 4 weeks ago, at the end of a council meeting, that, we don't have enough money. But we'll get into that the next show.
Whoa. They only lost $700,000.
Now, initially, it was only
Drop in the bucket.
only 529.
Okay, yeah.
And then it kind of grew. But there's some things that I've learned since then that are even more disturbing, shall I say, that has to do with the budget, is some other costs that, anyway, we'll get into that the next show. You want to tune in next week and hear this interview with Mr. Thomas about the budget. We've talked to, who was it we had on, was Jim?
Councilman Sanders.
Talked a little bit about the budget. That was last week. So that's in part why we asked Councilmember Thomas to come on and talk to us a little bit about the budget crisis or fiasco or problem, however you want to put it. But getting back to the Super Walmart, have you heard anything update on a Golden Shovel Day?
Outside of the grand celebration we had at City Council?
Outside of that?
Outside of that, no, we haven't. I haven't had a chance to dig in it anymore. I know we've been talking to some people about, when we do decide that date when we're going to have the groundbreaking, that we really would like for them to be there and participate.
Have you talked to any former council members?
Yeah, talked to Mr. Holloway about it. As you probably know, me and Mr. Holloway are
good buddies,
good friends. Have a lot of respect for him for working in this community as city council for over, I think, 16 years.
Yes, he was on council 16 years. Yes.
A lot of things that I gravitate to him for in reference on things. So, good friend of mine.
Good source of knowledge.
Yes, sir.
He's a good guy. We used to have him when we did radio all the time.
Yes.
And he'd bring food from, at that time he had the hamburger stand, and he'd bring food over to us. And he's a Cajun.
Oh, yes, he is. And he'll let you know he is.
Big LSU fan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Huge.
Yeah. Don't hold that against him, please.
No, we don't. No.
So we'll have to have Chip back on one of these days. He's been on our guest here several times. But unfortunately, believe it or not, we're at the end of our show. So we'll have you back next week, and we'll talk about the council some more.
Thank you, Robert.
Join us next week here on KZGN-TV for Ridgecrest Talk with me, Al Huey, and my partner, Robert Eierman. Good night, folks. God
See you
bless.
later.